Alright, this is Phoenix Incandescent, Chapter 6, Keep Me Safe. Charlotte rolled over and pushed the off button on the alarm. Bliss mumbled something incoherent and stretched her wings out across the bed. Charlotte wiggled out from underneath Bliss's left wing and hurried into her closet to slip into jeans and a sweater. She was pulling on her socks and shoes when Bliss, who was still dressed in her gown from the ball, cracked an eye open and yawned. It was a beaded two-piece gown of blue and green with a long skirt hung low on her hips, the top tied in two places on her back between her wings. Bliss sashayed over to the couch and sat down. Charlotte admired Bliss, who was younger than she was, but much more confident. Bliss was curvy with wide shoulders and hips. She was taller than both Beau and Charlotte, and she made clothes look better than they would on any other woman. "I've forgotten how frightening you look in the morning," Charlotte teased. "I only look frightening in the mornings?" Bliss crossed her legs and reclined. "I'll have to work on that." Charlotte crossed her arms over her knees. "I'm sorry we argued yesterday." "I'm not." Bliss tossed the pillow at Charlotte. Charlotte pulled off one of her shoes and tossed it at Bliss. Soon the room was covered with stray pillows and shoes and wadded up dirty clothes. They finally ended up laughing in a heap on the floor. "You know, usually I get into more trouble than you and Beau combined," Bliss said as she stretched her long legs out. "I was surprised that you two left last night." "I couldn't leave them out there, no matter who they were." "Beau is the same way." Charlotte flipped over on her stomach. "I guess Beau and I have always run off and left you behind." Bliss waved her hand in the air. "I'm old enough now that it doesn't bother me. You two have this weird bond anyway, and I'm certainly not about to be a third wheel." She sat up. "What I was trying to say was that I think what you two did was brave." She rolled her eyes. "Stupid, but brave." "I'm sorry I didn't give you more credit last night. You were right about Raven." "That's more like it," Bliss smiled. "And my offer stands. Come stay with me in my homeland someday. We'll talk." There was a knock at the door before Wynne and Wilder and Beau stepped into the room. They all looked around, but none of them said a word. It was far from the first time they had wrecked the bedroom. Charlotte jumped up from the floor. "What's happened since I've been asleep? How are Raven and Ebby?" Wilder wrapped her in a hug. "Good morning, little Lottie." "It's been a long time since you've called me little Lottie," Charlotte smiled. She snuck a glance at Beau. Did he tell his father about what she had said last night? Beau smiled back. "I've missed you these last few years." Wilder kissed her forehead. "We all have." "I've missed you all too." She smiled at Wynne and Wilder with their matching heads of short white hair and eyes of gold. Beau and Bliss both had dark brown heads of hair and dark brown eyes. Wilder cleared his throat. "The McGuard interviewed everybody and inspected every inch of the castle and grounds. They all escaped. We don't have much to go on right now." "Raven is in a magical coma right now as she heals," Wynne added. "We all feel responsible for bringing her here. We had no idea she was a spy." Wilder hugged her closer. "Lottie, we don't think Ebby is going to make it. I'm afraid she's declined considerably and is refusing medical treatment. You should probably see her now. Your father, on the other hand, is about the same state as when you saw him yesterday." Charlotte's heart dropped. She returned the hug that Wynne offered her next, and then headed down to her parents' room. Sebastian, red-eyed and shoulder-stooped, sat on the edge of the bed. He took her hand and patted it. "There's nothing I can do for him right now. He's in and out. You can try to speak with him here, but keep your expectations low." I should have been here sooner." Charlotte sat down on the bed and held her father's hand. "No, you needed to sleep. I've taken care of him medically." "I know you have, Sebastian." She reached over and patted his shoulder. "You need rest, too." "I'll sleep soon." "How are Spindle and Chime?" Charlotte asked hesitantly. "They are awake and healing well. I expect a full recovery for both." Charlotte breathed a sigh of relief. She handed the throw on the end of the bed to Sebastian. "You sleep now. That's a direct order, Hob." Sebastian smiled fondly and nodded. "What would we do without your family, Charlotte?" Charlotte smiled back at him. "What would we do without our Hobbs?" She turned back to her father after Sebastian popped out of sight. "Papa?" There was no response. She held his hand, brushed his hair back from his face, and talked to him. She sang one of the songs he would sing to her at bedtime. She read to him out of his favorite book. He didn't stir. Finally, she began to pace the room in frustration. "Is that you, Charlotte?" a strong voice asked from the doorway. Yes, Charlotte recognized the dwarf's face from many of her father's photo albums, but she couldn't recall who the man was. He had a warm, fatherly face with mischievous eyes. His hair and beard were gray and braided with bits of leather woven through them. He crossed the room and bowed before her. My name is Barnabas. I was one of your father's traveling companions many years ago. I recognize your face from pictures, Charlotte said, and your voice is familiar. It's been several years since I saw you last, he admitted. In fact, you were my height the last time I saw you. Charlotte looked down at the pressed uniform and shiny buttons. A knife hung from his belt. Are you part of the McGuard? I am. I've heard that you're eager for information. He handed her a disc made of moonstone. Here are the reports of what happened from everybody who was there. Do you have a device to read it? You know my father. She pressed the disc into her palm. What truths did it hold? What secrets would be left unanswered? I have a rudimentary magical computer in the attic that Mother and I used from time to time. One of our Hobbs is good with technology. He turned one of our mirrors into a computer of sorts. Magical technology has changed a lot recently, Barnabas said. He laid his hand on Isaac's foot. I side with your father on it. So you don't know how to use it either, then? Barnabas snorted and sat down on the other side of the bed. My son helps me. They sat together in silence. Charlotte wished she knew how exactly her father knew Barnabas. She was confident that if she pressed him for information, he would just clam up like Basil and Joseph did. What adventures did these men go on, and why were they such important secrets? Charlotte rose. I should see Ebby now. Barnabas rose and bowed. I'll see you later at the Alliance meeting. The what? Many of us feel that we should make an alliance amongst the magical community in order to gather useful information and devise a plan to defeat this unknown enemy. The McGuard will do its job well, but it has its own limitations. We need all Magani to work together and share information. Isaac sat up and screamed. He was sweaty, pale, and alert. Oh, Audrey, my Audrey! His voice was scratchy and panicked. Get Zarok and Wilder, Barnabas barked toward the door where another member of the McGuard stood. Papa, are you okay? Isaac reached for her hand. Oh, Lottie, I am so sorry. He kissed her hand and then looked over at Barnabas. Oh, I'm so relieved you're here. He sat up straighter. Barnabas bowed slightly from his sitting position. Me too, old friend. You've been out of touch for many hours, you know. Isaac rubbed his face and looked around the room. It's Audrey. I've completely lost the link. Charlotte handed him his glasses from the nightstand and propped him up with pillows. What broke the link? I must get my wife back, Barnabas. I know, my friend. Try to focus on why and where the link broke. Wilder stepped into the room. Charlotte, Ebby is worse. You should see her immediately. Isaac's face paled. What has happened to her? She fought for Audrey. She was close to death when Beau and Charlotte found her, and she has refused further medical treatment. Wilder sat in a chair next to the bed. Sebastian did what he could, but he has a hard time getting anything done at all. He won't be able to help her, Isaac whispered. He threw his legs over the side of the bed and stumbled in the bathroom. Charlotte, come here. Charlotte followed him into the bathroom where he had just taken a picture off the bathroom wall and revealed a safe. Isaac handed her a small red vial. He wrapped his hands around hers. Go quickly to Ebby, alone. Okay. Alone, you hear me? He demanded before she even finished her word. Please trust me on this. She may already be gone, but please pour this oil on her head. Massage it gently into her scalp. She raised her eyebrows, but Isaac did not fill the silence between them with words. He went to work closing the safe and placing the picture back over it. Charlotte stepped back into the bedroom. She looked between Wilder and Barnabas, but neither of them said a word either. Barnabas, send one of your own to ensure her privacy, Isaac said as he got back into bed. Then get me Zarok. It's time to find my wife. Barnabas walked with Charlotte into the hallway. He stopped in front of the younger version of himself with a press suit and a knife at the belt under a head of hair that had yet to gray from brown. This is my son Alcott. He will assure your privacy. Alcott bowed. It is my honor to meet you, Charlotte. Please follow me. Alcott posted him outside of Ebby's door. I will be here when you are done. Call out if you need anything. Thank you, Alcott. Charlotte shut the door and hurried over the thick curtains to let a little light and warmth in the room. Lottie? A voice croaked out from the bed. Charlotte hurried over and knelt next to the woman who was white and as cold as ice. Ebby! She covered her with the blanket. What's wrong with you? Why won't you let anyone treat you? Not so loud, child. Not so loud. Ebby's voice was rough and low. Ebby, where are the rest of their blankets? Let's get you warmed up. I'll get Sebastian and I'll sit with you while he takes care of you. She giggled nervously. Do you hear that? I'll take care of you. Ebby's head fell to the side and she offered a smile. Listen, child, I don't have much longer to live. No, Ebby. Charlotte cried out and tucked the blanket around her tighter. Hush, child. You are going to need to learn more self-discipline than you have right now. Scolding you is only making me weaker. Now listen. Ebby paused and closed her eyes. Charlotte sniffled. Ebby, Mother is gone, and Father's acting weird. He woke up and sent me with this vial. Ebby's eyes flashed open, and some color came back. Then there is a chance. I thought all was lost. She wailed, and tears spilled out of her eyes. Charlotte's eyes widened. She inched closer and kissed Ebby's tear-streaked face. Will this heal you? In a manner of speaking, yes, it will. She wrapped her hands around Charlotte's hands. Now, you must keep my secret. You must protect me, Charlotte. It is your turn to take care of me. A smile crossed her lips. Your parents have been so good to me. I'm the one who was supposed to guard your mother, you know. I failed. Your father told you what to do? You must wait until I say so. It'll be easier to manage if I choose to die, rather than have you guess how close to death I am. Charlotte felt the warm tears sliding down her face. What are you talking about? Ebby frowned. Charlotte, I need you. I am dying in this form, but I can live if I transform into my other form. Please take care of me until I'm ready to be reborn. Do not even tell your father I'm safe. Tell him the oil failed. Nobody but you and I must know until later. She placed the gold necklace into Charlotte's hands before starting to twitch and groan. Charlotte, use the oil now. Take care of me. Keep me safe. Charlotte fumbled with the vial. She poured the oily contents on Ebby's head and massaged it into her scalp. Ebby's eyes closed and her breathing was intermittent. Charlotte cried into the oil as she gently rubbed it into Ebby's scalp. Ebby no longer took a breath. Slowly, the necklace and Ebby started to glow. There was a flash of light, and Ebby was gone. Charlotte sobbed into her hands. Why had her father always pressed honesty and knowledge? Why did she now find herself with barely a hint of what was happening? So Rock was right. Nobody had prepared her for this. Lost in grief, she screamed and tore through Ebby's room. She searched in vain for a book, a picture, a journal, or a secret something. There was nothing, and she still couldn't get into the closet or bathroom. She finally picked up the necklace Ebby had given her. It was warm, and an opal now hung from the chain. She fell on her knees and pressed the necklace to her lips. Sometime later, she felt a warm hand on her shoulder. Charlotte, what's wrong? Wynne asked. Why? She sobbed. Why doesn't anybody tell me anything? Charlotte, where's Ebby? Wynne gently pulled her up by her elbows. What happened? She's gone, she whimpered. She vanished right in front of me. She wiped her eyes with her sweater. She's dead. I'm so sorry, Charlotte. Wynne rubbed her back. Come, we need to tell your father. Charlotte laughed hysterically. My father needs to tell me some things. She pulled away from Wynne and ran to the packed bedroom. She scowled. She wanted to be with her father, alone. She pushed her way through the crowd to a side. She's gone! Ebby is gone! She cried out. Lodestar scowled down at her. Dane Weaver, you should control yourself. Charlotte glared at her. Point your horn back up, because I'm not impressed, and you're likely to take out Zerok's eye. Lodestar broke into a cackle that spread into laughter from the others throughout the room. Charlotte crossed her arms in front of her chest and fumed. What is so funny? She demanded. My dear child, you may be the first person in history to yell at a unitar, Isaac said with a cough and a laugh. He waved her over to the bed. Come here, daughter. Charlotte sat down next to him and cried into his chest. He patted her back and kissed her head. I'm so sorry about Ebby, Charlotte. He wiped the tears from his own eyes. I want you to know we are going to try to find your mother right now. Zerok will be leading a pack of centaurs to the last spot I had track of your mother. Wilder and Wynne will assist them. It's our turn for a rescue, Wilder winked at her from across the room. Ah, yes, Isaac kissed her head again. I'd like to talk to you about that one, dear one. Charlotte sat back up and wiped her eyes. I'd do it again. Isaac laid his hand over her hand. We will talk regardless, but right now you owe the room an apology for your outburst. Mourning or not, you had no right to barrel through here like that. I deserved some of your fire, but they didn't. I'm sorry. Charlotte glanced around the room quickly. You're forgiven, whiny Dane Weaver, Bo imitated Lodestar's voice. Lodestar snorted and rolled her eyes. Charlotte smiled at Bo and then looked back at her father. I'm sorry, Papa. Why don't you go for a bit so we can finish our meeting, Isaac suggested. You and I will talk privately later. I'll send somebody to fetch you when I'm ready. She kissed her father on the cheek and stood. I'll be in the attic looking at reports if anybody needs me. Bo caught her hand as she left the room. May I come with you since I still don't know what happened either? She tugged his hand. Yes, but only if you don't act scared of me. Fear not, frail Dane Weaver. I'm actually quite used to your whiny outbursts. Charlotte hit him in the arm. Bo shook his head in mock sadness and placed his arm around her shoulder. You did look frightening there for a moment. Bo's demeanor was much less light-hearted once they reached the attic. He turned her to face him and wouldn't let her struggle away. His chocolate brown eyes bore into hers slowly. Bo Wingard, say something. There's still something you haven't told me, but I haven't figured it out yet. He grabbed the moonstone disc from her hands and paced across the room while he tossed the disc back and forth between his hands. Charlotte sat on the indoor swing and watched him. Bo's wings spread out and tensed with his thoughts. Finally, Charlotte strode over impatiently and grabbed the disc from his hands and slid it into the slot in the large oval mirror on the wall. It's time for some answers. An image of one of the Megard popped up as he gave a report of what happened based on the interviews. It was bizarre to watch the information as part of a report instead of part of their lives. They saw clips of many of the interviews, pictures of the aftermath of the ballroom, as well as the demolished garage and parts of the grounds that had been damaged while the group tried to escape. Bo grimaced when the report mentioned Raven and her role. They saw Philip walk back into the ballroom. He stopped in the middle of the room and muttered a confusion spell that spread instantly across the entire room, hindering sight and smell and thought for everyone. It was then that Raven grabbed Audrey and flew out of the room. The doors of the lawns were blown to pieces by some sort of spell, injuring many in the room. The dozen intruders quickly sifted through the room, taking a mermaid, an elf, and one of her father's current students. They had tried to take Chime, but Spindle prevented it. They tried to take Isaac, but Joseph and Basil prevented it. 2 of the intruders were killed. Echoes could be seen clearly giving orders to some of the others. The ones who were taken instantly vanished right after being strapped to a chimera. It was obvious that the protection spell that encompassed the grounds was woven together by her father and Basil and Joseph as soon as they stopped the attack against Isaac. It was hard to stomach the pictures of Raven and Ebby, who were covered with scorch marks. Charlotte turned from the picture of Ebby and stood that way while the report ended. She didn't need to hear or see any more. She had watched Ebby die in person. Charlotte sat on her swing again. Bo sat next to her, his wings spread out behind them. They sat like that for a long time before Bo broke the silence. Do you want to talk about Ebby? Do you want to talk about any of it? Charlotte shook her head no. Outside the sky slowly turned dark and began to rumble. It's fitting that it should rain today, Bo observed. Charlotte nodded. They swung slowly as the rain poured outside. She laid her head against Bo's shoulder. You know, Wingard, you are my best friend. And you, Locklear, are mine. And that is chapter 6. Thanks, guys.